Hello YouTubers, 2016 has come to a beginning, 2015 has come to an end, and I think it's a bit late, but I'm gonna count down my 15 favorite films of the year 2015.
Yeah.
These are only movies that were released in Australia in 2015, so no, if it says 2015, if it says 2014 on IMDb or whatever, it doesn't matter because it'll still be on the list. Now before I get to counting down the 15 movies, I feel like I should mention the movies that I didn't really get to see in 2015, but I really wanted to see and maybe would have made it to the list. I don't know, but these are those movies. Room, The Big Short, The Danish Girl, Absolutely Any. Those are those movies. Maybe you? I think I should get some honorable mentions to movies that I did see in 2015 that I think are worth a viewing and but didn't quite make it to the list. So Ant-Man, Avengers: Age of Ultron, Lost River, Ryan Gosling's directing debut. That's definitely worth viewing, that one. Terminator Genesis, Furious 7, Jupiter Ascending.
Chappie.
So without further ado, I think I should get down to just doing the list. So yeah. Kingsman, The Secret Service. Nothing like the comic book, but I don't care, the movie was great. The action scenes, or really the whole movie, was just shot brilliantly. The comedy and the action was balanced perfectly, and the gore and the action itself was just glorious. And the characters were just, you know, really well done. It follows the story of Eggsy, a British boy who becomes a spy. That's it. That's really it. That's really all you need to know, really. And also Samuel L. Jackson plays a bad guy with a lisp. So there's that. It follows. Rarely do we get really good horror movies of this caliber, especially indie horror movies. Cinematography and the soundtrack are just perfect, and for the teenage characters, it's spot on. Everything feels real. Even when the characters do something stupid, it feels real. So like when they fail at defeating the bad guy this one time, it kind of makes sense because the plan was stupid because it was thought up by a bunch of teenagers. So it follows the story of Jay, who is being followed by a mysterious supernatural force after a really bad sexual encounter with a guy who she thought she could trust but can't. Crimson Peak. I just love Guillermo del Toro's movies. His imagination is just beautiful, and so is this movie. This movie was absolutely beautiful, not just in the way it looks, but in the story and the way it feels as well. It pulls you in with the emotions. You actually genuinely care. Well, I did at least. You care for the characters, or at least the main character. Tom Hiddleston was also really good in this movie, so yeah. It follows the story of a young author who is being married into a home with people who may not be who they seem. And the house also might not be what it seems. When you watch the trailer, you might think it's a ghost movie, but no, this is not a ghost movie. Yes, it is a horror movie, but it's also a period piece romance that just happens to have ghosts in it. So there's, yeah. Inherent Vice. If anything could be the modern equivalent of The Big Lebowski, it's Inherent Vice. Just, this movie was weird. And not in that weird, like, blah, 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 like aliens or sci-fi phantasma higamajigs. Not that kind of weird, but weird in that this movie kind of doesn't make sense unless you watch it multiple times. For some reason, I am one of those people who can watch confusing movies for the first time and still kind of understand it, so I kind of understood this movie, but definitely I'm gonna go watch it again because it's, and the movie stays with you for a bit after watching it, because it's just hilarious. I can't really explain with words how I feel about this movie. I really liked it. I liked it so much that I drew the main character, so yeah. It follows the story of hippie detective Larry Doc Sportello, played brilliantly by Joaquin Phoenix, as he searches for his missing girlfriend who has disappeared, and also this millionaire guy who has also disappeared. So it's like a detective movie, but it's very strange. It's also a comedy, but all the characters and storylines, because it goes for 2.5 hours, so you can expect it to be quite complex. It's just all these different characters and storylines get intertwined with this other stories, and it kind of gets confusing. You really have to pay attention while watching this movie. It doesn't help that the main character's kind of not paying attention the whole time either, so yeah. Also, the soundtrack is fantastic, so yeah. Dope. Yet another movie from 2015 with spot-on teenage characters. Everything in this movie just feels real. None of these characters in this movie boil down to typical stereotypes, and I thought that was fantastic. And because the characters kind of, I kind of relate to these characters in that they're nerds, or geeks actually, and so I thought that this movie, I laughed at every right moment that I was supposed to laugh, and I thought this movie was hilarious at the points where it's supposed to be hilarious. I mean, it is a comedy. It follows the story of Malcolm and his 3 friends who are all obsessed with everything from the 90s, and his life changes one night when he's invited to this party, and as the place is being like raided or something, this guy puts drugs and a gun into his backpack, and he and his friends have to try and find ways to get rid of the drugs by themselves without the help of any adults, because they'd probably get arrested. It's a brilliant story of racism and growing up filled to the brim with 90s and current pop culture references, and I just thought that, yeah, it was hilarious and dramatic, all at the right points. Spectre. James Bond is at it again, and this movie is great. Sam Mendes just needs to keep making Bond movies, because Skyfall and Spectre are just amazing. The way that those movies are shot is just gorgeous. And the opening sequence of this movie was weird, but I liked it. Where the hell did that come from? Daniel Craig is probably my favorite James Bond. Sorry, Sean Connery, but Daniel Craig is just my favorite James Bond. I liked all of his movies except for Quantum of Solace. Spectre is not my favorite Bond movie. It could have been way better. That's why it's only number 10 on this list. But the opening shot of this movie was absolutely stunning. It's just one long tracking shot as he goes through this Day of the Dead parade, through a thing and through another thing until the building explodes. And it was just incredibly well done. Also, Christoph Waltz, as always, is just absolutely riveting in this movie. Oh my god, he's probably the best Bond villain out there. Or at least in acting-wise. The Martian. Cool boy, The Martian. What can I say about The Martian that hasn't already been said? Matt Damon was spot on. He was just fantastic in this movie. The special effects in this movie were out of this world. Yeah, I said it. I love The Martian. I love all the parts that were funny. All the parts that were dramatic. It was bringing in all the emotions that you were supposed to be feeling, and you really felt for this character because he's isolated on a planet by himself, and because he's not just some asshole that they decided to put on Mars for the sake of making it funny. You really do relate to this guy, Mark Watney, and you really hope for him to get off the planet. And all the cameos and all the characters and stuff were great. Donald Glover in this movie was hilarious. So, follows the story of Mark Watney, an astronaut who is stranded on Mars and presumed dead, and basically his team and NASA have to try and get him off the planet safely. He was nominated for Best Comedy of the Year for the Golden Globes. Yeah. The Lobster. This is a weird movie. It would have been higher on the list if the ending was a bit more of an ending. Yes, it's very open to interpretation, but some movies can just be too open for interpretation. And that might be a bit spoilery. This movie just kind of ends. You're not given even the slightest hint of whether or not it's gonna end one way or another. And there's like not even 2 different ways that it could end. There's a few different ways that it could end, you know? But other than the ending, I absolutely love this movie. There are a few cringeworthy bits as well, and not just in awkwardness, but in just really uncomfortable moments of, I want to say violence, but gore maybe, but not really gore because it's kind of hidden from the camera. But anyway, there's some really cringy moments. But all in all, this movie was just hilarious, and very weird hilarious. It's like Wes Anderson's stone-faced awkward comedy, just on steroids, and it was beautifully shot, beautifully soundtracked, and if that's a word, and Colin Farrell was just really funny in this movie. It's set in a, I would say, dystopian future where singles are taken to this place called the Hotel, where if they don't get into a relationship within 45 days, they're turned into an animal. Yeah, pretty weird, isn't it? Colin Farrell basically plays a guy who has been sent to the hotel, and hijinks ensue, and it just, you know, the story goes on from there. I don't really want to talk about it anymore because you just have to watch it yourself. It's just weird and hilarious, and go watch The Lobster. Victoria. It's 2.5 hours long, and it's done in one long take. And it's not like Birdman in that it makes it look like it's one long take, but it's clearly not. This movie was literally done in one long 2.5 hour take. The movie doesn't just use the one take thing as a gimmick, more just like a platform to tell a great story. And it is a great story. It follows Victoria, a woman from Madrid who late at night is brought into this group of men who get her involved in a heist. Shit goes down, and this movie is relentless. Also just beautiful. This movie was absolutely just, it's a great film. Ex Machina. This is a movie I've been looking forward. This was a movie I was looking forward to since like it was announced and the trailer came out and everything. And it was everything that I expected, except for the ending. The ending was very unexpected, and I'm not going to spoil it at all. This movie, if you haven't seen it, is very psychological. Like, it does things to your brain, like it messes with your head a bit. It's not only gorgeous to look at, but also gorgeous to listen to. This is a gorgeous movie, I guess. It's about a tech guy who's invited to this secret laboratory or facility or something to test out an AI or a robot, to test whether or not she feels human to him. And I gotta say, this movie's really well done in that, because you yourself kind of forget that she's a robot sometimes. It's that good. It messes with your head, man. Check it out though, it's really good. Sicario. The first thing that comes to mind when you think Sicario is probably Emily Blunt. Her performance in this movie was just great. I'm actually really surprised that she wasn't nominated for Best Actress, because the cinematography in this movie is definitely worth the nomination that it got. And Benicio del Toro was just fantastic as usual. He was just great. He was mysterious. It follows the story of Kate, an idealistic FBI agent enlisted by a government task force to aid in the war against drugs at the border area between the US and Mexico. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good synopsis of the movie, because anything else would really spoil it. It's a movie about trust, and she can't trust anyone and doesn't want to trust anyone. And as you watch the movie, you can really tell why. So go check out Sicario. It's a great film. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. I think I talked about this movie a while ago, and I saw it pretty much when it came out, like a few days after it came out. And it's another movie from last year that just has spot-on teen characters. This is a comedy that also gets really feelsy, as you can kind of tell by the title. It follows high schooler Greg. He's one of those guys who kind of just blends in. He doesn't belong to any specific friend group, and also he's a really big film nerd. So I really related to his character. He's basically just forced into a friendship by his mother with a girl who has been diagnosed with cancer. Their friendship starts off really awkward, but it builds up, and you really feel for these characters in this movie, man. It's a great movie that it just tugs at your heartstrings. That's really stereotypical. It really punches you right in the feels sometimes. And it's very well shot. And this movie feels like those movies that Greg is really into, the movies from Criterion Collection. I feel like this movie will make it into the Criterion Collection. It's that good, and it's a beautiful movie, not just in the cinematography, but also in the story, and the characters just feel real as well. So there's that. Macbeth. Macbeth is my favourite Shakespeare play, and this movie did it brilliantly. I still, like, as an accurate representation of the source material, I still prefer Roman Polanski's version of Macbeth, but as a film, and as a pure piece of artwork, I much prefer Justin Kurzel's version of Macbeth. This movie was absolutely stunning. All the acting in this movie was amazing and spot on, and so was the cinematography. And I think because of the fact that it's an indie movie is really the only reason why it wasn't nominated for Best Cinematography, because this movie definitely deserves it. The trailer itself deserves Best Cinematography. It's just that gorgeous. I mean, it's Macbeth, so it's already an established story that I don't really need to delve into that much. It's Macbeth, and it's done really well. It's not that often you get a really, really good modern interpretation of a Macbeth story. So I was really impressed when I saw this movie, and I'm definitely going to watch it multiple times, because especially considering that I really like Macbeth by itself. So, no. Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. This movie would make it to number 1 because of just nostalgia alone. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't like Star Wars. I absolutely loved Star Wars The Force Awakens. I mean, I'm wearing a Darth Vader shirt right now, which actually has nothing to do with Star Wars The Force Awakens, but whatever. This is an Empire Strikes Back shirt, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe Return of the Jedi. I'm a massive Star Wars fan, and I mean, I absolutely love this movie. It was a fantastic experience, and finally we get new Star Wars movies that the younger generation can finally go see Star Wars movies in the cinema. J.J. Abrams just brought Star Wars back. Like, we haven't seen Star Wars movies this good since the original trilogy, so I have huge hopes for the rest of the sequel trilogy. Rian Johnson better make it good. I mean, he will. There are some J.J. Abrams-isms that you can see in this movie, obviously you see in this movie, and it was great. The lightsaber battles, the starfighter battles, and just the massive, brand new Death Star planet thing. It was just absolutely, I mean, I was just sitting in the movie theater, like, pretty much the whole time, so yeah, next one. My number 1 favorite film from the year 2015. Was it any surprise that I would be choosing Mad Max Fury Road? Yeah, I mean, look at this. I have a poster of it, like, up there, right there, so like, I mean, oh crap, I need to put the camera back. Was it really any surprise that I would be choosing this movie? I absolutely loved it. While we were watching it in cinema, I was just watching it like pretty much the whole time. It's an absolutely gorgeous film. The cinematography is gorgeous, the soundtrack is amazing, the action is just perfect. This movie is borderline perfect. I would give it an 11 out of 10 if I could. I mean, I did that with Birdman last year, so I'm going to give it an 11 out of 10. I just loved everything about this movie, and I can't think of anything that I didn't like about this movie. Strong female characters, a storyline that's easy to follow but not, you know, really simple, that it's just not, doesn't count as a story. Gorgeous cinematography and action. The action's done so well. It's like handheld, but you can see exactly what's happening, and all of the stunts are just crazy. And I mean, just look at this shot of the dust storm. It's just gorgeous. And that is so just part of the reasons. I could talk about this movie for hours, so those are just some of the reasons why Mad Max Fury Road is my number 1 favorite film from the year 2015. A lot of it does boil down to my experience in the cinema, but also just I mean, I watched it again in Blu-ray, and I really love the movie, and I could talk about it for hours, but I'm not going to. Anyway, tell me what some of your favorite films from the year 2015 were in the comment section below. Tell me if there are any movies on this list that you disagree with, or any movies on this list that you absolutely didn't like. Just talk about this in the comment section below, and I will see you next episode of whatever it is that I decide to make. Bye!
Choto! Kinichiro! Dozo! Moto pancake! Moto pancake! Moto pancake! Hai! Hai! Hai!